Hello, my name is Topher Logan. I'm the trombone instructor here at Central Connecticut State University, and today I'm going to be presenting some information, some tips about the CMEA 2016 trombone region audition music, which is the etude number 7 from the Rochu-Bordoni etude collection, 120 musical vocalises by Marco Bordoni as transcribed by Johannes Rochu. It's important to note that the CMEA website does give instructions to make sure that you have the Carl Fischer edition of these pieces. There are, in fact, at least 2 Carl Fischer editions. There is a more recent one edited by the trombonist Alan Raff, and that's the one that most of you probably have. That's the edition that I'll play for you today. However, it's important to note that there is an older edition, the original, that includes the original transcriptions by Johannes Rochu. That is a little bit different than the newer edition. They're both Carl Fischer, so they're both sort of, I guess, allowable. But it would be important to make sure that you tell the judges which of these 2 Carl Fischer editions you're using, either the Alan Raff newer one or the older, more standard Carl Fischer edition. The only real big changes or differences between the 2 is, and the first one's not really of any note, is that there's a measure out front in the Alan Raff edition. That's presumably for the pianist to play a 1-bar introduction, or you don't actually play. But in measure 67, if you don't count that first bar as bar 1, if you only count the second bar where the actual music starts as bar 1, measure 67 towards the end, in the newer edition, you'll note that the phrase that starts in 67, the notes are A, G, and F, same as in bar 69. In the older edition, those notes are different. It's G, F, and E flat. And so just make sure that the judges know which edition you're using so that they don't mark you down for playing wrong notes, which aren't really wrong. At any rate, I'll play for you the Alan Raff edition. I'll be referring to measure numbers throughout this talk, so as I said, measure 1, ignore that first empty bar and use the musical measure 1. The tempo in this is allegretto grazioso, right? So that's a brisk pace, a little bit fast, but with grace, so gracefully played, right? There's lots of grace notes throughout here, so you're going to want to play it with a sort of a lilting quality, a vocal quality. Remember, these are vocal pieces that were written for vocal students to learn various different technical aspects of the voice, and they were transcribed by the trombonist Rochu for the trombone, for a lot of these lyrical playing. So you want to play it lyrically, as if you were to sing it. But make the grace notes graceful. In order to do that, you'll want to put the emphasis of the grace note on the downbeat, not on the grace note itself. So rather than, you don't want to put the emphasis on that grace note, but rather on the downbeat that the grace note is leading to. And use a sort of a ta-da, ta-da style of articulation with the accent on the da. When you take a breath, make sure you take a breath in time, especially at the beginning. Think about your tempo. Anywhere between 100 and 108 is fine. You don't have to play it completely metronomically. In fact, it's not very musical to play it totally metronomically. But find a tempo that works for you. I play it somewhere around 100, 102, 104. And stick with that tempo while using a little bit of rubato within each of the phrases, and you'll hear what I mean by that. It's important, though, when you're playing with rubato, to not just typically rush certain phrases. Phrases that you'll want to watch out for are those first sets of runs, like in bar 9, and the run in bar 19. A lot of students tend to rush the scale passages, like starting in 18. You don't want to rush down that scale because it just doesn't sound as musical, especially because that's ending that part of a phrase. So make sure you stick to a better time for that. Try to avoid, since this is in 6/8 time, you're going to want to avoid, it's easy to accent too much that last dotted quarter note of each phrase. Very often, students will be thinking so much about the time that they'll really sort of nail that last note of the phrase. That too much of a landing on that note is going to take away from the overall concept of a 4-bar phrase or an 8-bar phrase. So try, if you can, to decrescendo through the 8th note before each of those notes. And that'll give you a little bit more of shape to the phrase, a musical shape to the phrase. It'll also help you to not swallow or drop that last 8th note in a triplet feel, which is also another very common occurrence in playing in 6/8 time. Instead of blowing through ta-da-da-dam, a lot of people ta-da-da-da, ta-da-da-da. They'll sort of drop that last 8th note, and it's easy for it to just sort of not speak for you. There's not a whole lot of dynamic markings throughout this piece, and I think that that's good because it allows you to come up with some musical decisions of your own about how you would like the dynamics to work. But once you make those decisions, practice those decisions and make them musical. No two performances are going to be the same, and that's the way it should be, right? You want to play this musically. Like I said, should be lyrically played as if you were singing it. So find these antecedent and consequent phrases that are a hallmark of these Roshu etudes, and put in some dynamics that make musical sense to you. A lot of people will do a repeated phrase, loud the first time, soft the second time, or vice versa. But put those in and exaggerate them. There's only like a couple of those that are marked, if at all, especially on the last page, starting in bar 60. The 4-bar phrase that starts in bar 60 is repeated the second time, very quiet. First time it's fortissimo, or forte, I guess, and the last time it's pianissimo. So make those contrasts, but find other contrasts throughout the piece and practice them and put them in. The other thing I'll say is decide how you're going to end it and practice that ending. You can play this, as I will, with a little bit of rubato and a retard on the end of the last 2 or 3 bars. And that's very musical. Usually a lot of pieces will come sort of slowly to an end and retard, especially these vocal works. Or you can just plow straight through. But whichever decision you make it musical. And have fun with it. And we'll see you at regionals.